Zara was the first royal granddaughter in 500 years to be born without a title.
Who can bring down the entire institution through a series of very bad decisions. And although Harry and Meghan's, I think, will manifest differently, Andrew and Sarah are a reflection of what Harry and Meghan will most likely become.
The moment this story broke, it didn't just rattle the royal family, it detonated like a political bomb across the Commonwealth. Because behind the polished headlines, behind the smiling photos and glossy celebrity branding, a brutal reality was unfolding. One that many insiders say Prince William had been quietly preparing to expose for months. And when the truth finally surfaced, the message was devastatingly clear: the era of royal profit games was over. London woke up on March 13th to what palace insiders are calling the most explosive royal confrontation in years. At the center of the storm stood Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, once celebrated as the rebellious modern royals, now facing a backlash so intense that even their closest Hollywood allies reportedly began distancing themselves within hours. And the trigger for this global meltdown? A luxury besties retreat scheduled in Sydney, a wellness-style event where guests were expected to pay as much as $3,200 just for the promise of proximity to Meghan Markle herself. On the surface, it looked like another celebrity empowerment retreat, but inside royal circles, the reaction was immediate and furious. Senior figures inside Kensington Palace reportedly viewed the event as something far more serious, a calculated attempt to cash in on royal prestige while simultaneously attacking the very institution that created it. In other words, to them, this wasn't just a retreat. It was a royal brand being sold like a product. And Prince William was not about to let that happen. According to multiple palace sources, the Prince of Wales spent the early morning hours in an emergency strategy briefing with senior legal advisors connected to King Charles. The tone of that meeting, insiders say, was cold, direct, and absolutely uncompromising. William had reached his limit. For years, the Sussexes had attempted to balance a strange double life, publicly criticizing the monarchy while privately benefiting from its power and prestige. They called it independence. Critics called it something else entirely. And now, with the Sydney retreat threatening to turn the Sussex title into what some described as a pay-to-meet royal experience, William decided the line had been crossed. What followed inside Kensington Palace has since been nicknamed the Steel Strike, a quiet but devastating strategy designed to dismantle the Sussex commercial machine piece by piece. The first move was diplomatic and ruthless. Within hours, Kensington Palace issued a formal memorandum to Australia's Home Affairs Department. The document carried a very specific instruction. The visit by Harry and Meghan was to be officially classified as a private commercial venture, not a royal tour of any kind. That single classification changed everything, because once the trip lost its royal status, the privileges that usually surround members of the monarchy vanished instantly. No government-funded motorcades, no official diplomatic welcomes, no taxpayer-funded security, no state-sponsored venues. The message was unmistakable. If Harry and Meghan wanted to operate as private celebrities, they would now experience the full financial and logistical reality of that decision. For the Sussex camp, the consequences began almost immediately. The Sydney retreat had been carefully marketed as an exclusive high-status experience. But the moment the palace severed official ties, the entire aura of royal legitimacy started to collapse, and the public reaction was brutal. Within less than 24 hours, a protest petition launched by angry Australians exploded past 100,000 signatures, demanding that the couple stop exploiting their royal titles for commercial events. The word spreading across social media was even harsher: grifters. It was a label that had existed for years in online debates about the Sussex brand. But after William's intervention, the insult suddenly carried institutional weight. Inside the retreat's organizing team, panic reportedly erupted. Sponsors who had originally been drawn to the prestige of a Duchess-branded event began reconsidering their involvement. Legal advisors warned companies that association with an event publicly disavowed by the future king could quickly turn into a reputational disaster. And by early afternoon in Sydney, the first major cracks appeared. Two significant corporate backers, including a luxury travel firm and an Australian financial group, quietly pulled their funding. The effect was immediate. Without those sponsors, the retreat's business model suddenly looked dangerously unstable. But the financial pressure was only part of William's strategy, because the deeper goal of the Steel Strike was psychological. For years, Harry and Meghan had built their global identity around a powerful contradiction. They presented themselves as private citizens while still benefiting from the symbolic authority of the royal family. family. William's response dismantled that illusion. By forcing governments and corporations to treat the couple strictly as private individuals, he removed the invisible advantage that had made their brand profitable in the first place, the royal aura. And the contrast between the two royal camps could not have been sharper. While Meghan prepared to host manifestation workshops and luxury dinners for thousands of dollars per seat, Prince William spent the same morning attending a Commonwealth briefing focused on the cost of living crisis and housing instability affecting millions of ordinary families. The optics were devastating. One side appeared to be selling proximity and prestige, the other was performing public duty. For many observers across the Commonwealth, the comparison reinforced a growing narrative that the monarchy under William represented service, while the Sussex brand had become something closer to celebrity entrepreneurship. And as the day unfolded, it became clear that the steel strike was only beginning, because the deeper legal and diplomatic moves being prepared behind palace walls were about to push this confrontation far beyond a single retreat in Sydney. What had started as a luxury wellness event was rapidly transforming into something much bigger, a global battle over who truly controlled the power and meaning of the Windsor name. And by the time the sun began setting over London that evening, insiders were whispering the same shocking conclusion. Prince William wasn't trying to negotiate with Harry and Meghan anymore. He was preparing to shut the door on their royal business model completely. The deeper the day moved into the afternoon, the clearer it became that Prince William's so-called steel strike was not a symbolic gesture or a temporary warning. It was a full-scale institutional counterattack designed to dismantle the Sussex commercial empire at its foundation. And what made it so devastating was its precision. Every move William made targeted the exact mechanism Harry and Meghan had relied on for years, the delicate balance between royal prestige and private profit. Behind closed doors inside Kensington Palace, advisors began executing the next phase of the strategy. The objective was simple but brutally effective: remove the last traces of official recognition that allowed the Sussex brand to function in international markets. Diplomatic channels were activated immediately. Government officials in Australia were formally briefed that the Sussex trip carried zero royal status. This meant the couple would receive none of the ceremonial treatment normally granted to members of the monarchy. No state coordination, no ceremonial security escorts, no taxpayer-funded infrastructure. The visit would proceed exactly as it would for any other celebrity event promoter entering the country. For Harry and Meghan, that distinction created a logistical nightmare. Organizing a high-profile international event without government assistance requires millions of dollars in private security coordination alone. Estimates circulating among royal analysts suggested that protecting the couple during the multi-day Sydney retreat could cost upwards of $5 million if fully funded through private channels. And suddenly, that bill belonged entirely to them. For a brand already struggling with inconsistent revenue streams after the collapse of several high-profile media deals, the financial pressure was enormous. The Netflix partnership had delivered far less than expected. The Spotify contract had famously imploded, and now one of their last remaining high-profile ventures was beginning to unravel before it even started. Inside the retreat's organizing committee, the mood reportedly shifted from optimism to outright panic. Sponsors who had once been eager to associate themselves with the Duchess began quietly exiting the project. Lawyers warned that the event's promotional language, which leaned heavily on Meghan's royal identity, could expose companies to reputational backlash now that the palace had publicly severed ties. By midday Sydney time, the retreat's financial projections were already collapsing. But Prince William wasn't finished, because the next move was the most devastating one yet: a legal clarification of the Sussex status that had been quietly prepared for months. During a closed-door consultation involving the King's senior legal advisors, William approved a formal interpretation of the 2020 Sandringham Agreement, the document that originally defined the terms of Harry and Meghan's exit from royal duties. For years, the Sussexes had operated in a gray area, technically no longer working royals, but still publicly using their titles in ways that benefited their commercial ventures. The new directive closed that loophole. The clarification stated that royal titles and associations could not be used for commercial promotion, paid events, brand partnerships, or monetized appearances. Any attempt to market products, experiences, or services using royal prestige would now be considered a direct violation of the agreement. The implications were explosive, because suddenly the very thing that made events like the Sydney retreat profitable, the Duchess of Sussex branding, had become a legal liability. Talent agencies, marketing firms, and corporate sponsors around the world received quiet signals from palace channels that the Windsor family would not tolerate continued commercialization of royal status. And businesses understood the message immediately. Associating with the Sussex brand was no longer just a celebrity endorsement. It risked placing companies in open conflict with the future king of the United Kingdom. Within hours, industry insiders reported a wave of emergency meetings across Hollywood management firms. Contracts were being reviewed. Promotional campaigns were paused. Negotiations with the Sussex team were suddenly being reconsidered. The Sussex commercial machine was facing something far more dangerous than bad press. It was facing institutional isolation. For Meghan Markle, whose brand had always relied on exclusivity and high-status access, the psychological impact was immense. The retreat had been marketed as an intimate gathering where attendees could connect with a duchess who promised guidance on empowerment, manifestation, and personal success. But now the entire premise of that exclusivity had been shattered. Without royal endorsement, the event was no longer a gathering with aristocratic prestige. It was simply a celebrity seminar with an extremely expensive ticket price. And the public noticed. Across Australia, criticism intensified. The $3,200 ticket price began circulating online alongside images of ordinary families struggling with rising housing costs and inflation. Commentators pointed out the uncomfortable contrast between a luxury lifestyle retreat and the economic reality many citizens were facing. The narrative quickly turned harsh. What had once been promoted as a glamorous empowerment experience was now being described as a cash-for-access spectacle built on borrowed royal prestige. Meanwhile, Prince William continued performing the very role that strengthened his position in the public eye. While the Sussex team scrambled to salvage their event, William attended meetings with Commonwealth leaders focused on economic relief initiatives and housing policy discussions. The symbolism was powerful. One royal appeared to be addressing global challenges. The other appeared to be selling lifestyle inspiration. Public perception shifted rapidly. The contrast fed directly into the narrative that William's supporters had been building for years, that the future king represented duty and institutional responsibility, while the Sussex brand had evolved into celebrity activism mixed with commercial ambition. And the psychological consequences for Prince Harry were reportedly just as severe. Australia had once been one of the places where Harry felt most celebrated during his time as a working royal. The country had embraced him during previous tours, and he had often described it as one of his favorite destinations. Now he was returning under entirely different circumstances, not as a representative of the crown, but as a private figure associated with a controversial commercial event that had been publicly disavowed by his own brother. That transformation was deeply symbolic, and for the first time since Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties, the balance of power had decisively shifted. Prince William had drawn a line, and the world was watching to see whether the Sussex empire could survive the consequences.